Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this impromptu vlog I'd like to discuss what Boris Johnson has been up to this weekend, which may have a material effect on what Parliament can do when it returns in the first week of September. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So, there's a couple of things I could talk about. I talked about on Friday the aftermath of Boris Johnson's visits to France and Germany, and he is now basically gone from saying, oh yeah, we're definitely going to get a deal, to, oh, we may not get a deal at all. And this is all part of the blame game that I've already discussed in a few videos, because before he went there, he said, yeah, we can absolutely get a deal, but it depends on our European partners. Obviously, that's not what it's conditional upon. And then, obviously, having been told that actually no, after visiting France and Germany, so now he's basically saying, well, we may not get a deal because you know what, they're being really difficult. He's also saying things like we're not going to stump up the 39 billion and things like that. That's a topic for another video. Don't need to get into that right now. What I want to get into is Boris Johnson's request to the Attorney General to explore the legal position for proroguing. So prorogation has reared its ugly head again. Now, there's two potential ways to read this, but let me just explain what he has specifically asked the Attorney General to investigate. So Boris Johnson, on the face of it, is looking at proroguing Parliament, which means shutting it down for 5 weeks. Now, prorogation of Parliament is a normal thing that happens between parliamentary sessions, but we're not coming to the end of a natural break in the parliamentary session, so it shouldn't be happening anytime now. But in theory, he could do it. Doing it for 5 weeks is unusual, to say the least, and he intends to do it from the 9th of September, which would normally be the second week that Parliament's back after summer, for 5 weeks. Now, that doesn't take us up to the Brexit deadline, but it does take us past the date of the EU summit, which is round about mid-October, round about the 18th, 19th of October, something like that. Now, it is the EU summit where we would have to seek an extension. Bear in mind, there is nothing we can do with Brexit, whether it be, you know, sorting out a deal that can get through Parliament, whether it be organising other public votes. There's nothing we can do with the time we have available. You know, despite Donald Tusk saying don't waste this time, well, we did, as was expected. The only thing we could do is revoke or go out with no deal. That's all that's left to us. That's it. That's the binary choice that Parliament has if it has to do something by October the 31st. So by proroguing Parliament from the second week back to after the EU summit, what he's effectively doing is stopping Parliament from being able to do anything to avoid the no-deal Brexit, other than, I suppose, voting to revoke, which he doesn't believe they're going to do. So why at that time? Why do it? If he can do it at all, why do it at that time? There is the possibility he genuinely wants to do this. I'm not so sure. I think it's to try and bounce Parliament into a misfield effectively in the first week. Here's the situation. We know the situation from Boris Johnson. He wants to take us out without a deal. The reason he wants to do this is not because he personally wants to, but because that's how he is Prime Minister. That's how he stays as Prime Minister. In his own head, whether it's true or not is yet to be tested, and he's not going to test it. He certainly believes that in order for him to remain as Prime Minister, he has to follow through with it. So, what do Parliament want to do? Well, they want to stop him from doing this. Most of Parliament want him to stop going ahead with Brexit at all, but certainly the vast majority want to stop him going ahead with no deal. How can they do it? The easiest way to do it is depose him as Prime Minister, because ultimately whatever we want to do requires us still being in the EU on the 1st of November. That means we need an extension. That means we need our Prime Minister to go and ask for another extension, preferably with a plan, but certainly we need to actually go and genuinely ask for it. We can't trust Boris Johnson to do this. Even if Parliament legislates to force him to do it, you know, he could do it badly. But here's another thing about why prorogue in the second week. You know, why do it on the 9th of September? Part of it could be this legislation. Parliament has not yet legislated for Boris Johnson to seek another extension. To do so would be a little tricky in 1 week. I know that Parliament have enacted legislation very quickly, in this year. But if you think about it, so they'll go back. The main business would be, on Tuesday, the 3rd of September. Parliament has to seize control of the business of the House. It didn't do that before summer. It had the chance to do it and it didn't do it. So it now has to do it. So Tuesday, nothing can really happen because it's got to seize control of the business for maybe Wednesday. Then Wednesday, put the legislation forward. Even if they legislate to force Boris Johnson to seek an extension, it's not only got to go through the House of Commons several times, which it would. It's got to go through the House of Lords where, Brexit supporting Lords would filibuster. They'd try and delay it. It's not a given that it could be done in that first week. And of course, if Parliament's gone, on the 9th of September, then that legislation isn't law anymore. It's not, it's not been given royal assent. So then Johnson gets to go to the EU summit without any instruction from Parliament on how to proceed. So he will go to the EU summit and say, oh, it's a shame you didn't want to do a deal with me. I guess we're leaving without a deal then. And he comes back, Parliament comes back and they've still got just under 2 weeks left to go. But what are they going to do? What are they going to do? They can't then instruct him to go and seek a deadline because the summit's been and gone. All they can do is revoke. And would they do that? Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. So if Boris Johnson is able to prorogue and he's able to do it in the second week, and by the way, that is subject to a court case at the moment, so that needs to get a move on. It is actually being hurried through at the moment of the Court of Session in Scotland. The idea being that as soon as this, hopefully that's done and dusted this coming week, and then it would be ready for the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court fires up again. And, you would assume they would fast track it and get a decision out within that first week. But I think what Boris Johnson is trying to do is to bounce the anti-no deal MPs into potentially accepting that he may, not certain, but may legally be able to do this, in which case Parliament has got exactly 1 week to stop him. There is only one guaranteed way to stop Boris Johnson, and as I've already said, that's to get rid of his Prime Minister, replace him with someone else. If he can prorogue, that definitely leaves that as the only option. So how's that going? Because that's an obvious thing to do. Well, the position at the moment is that Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party, wants to form an alliance where he becomes the Prime Minister. He is more than happy to issue that vote of no confidence, and he's the only one that can do it, and and the government not block it, as soon as Parliament goes back. He can do it as soon as Parliament goes back. So on the Tuesday he can do that. On the Wednesday they can have the vote. On the Thursday they can form a new government. Boris Johnson is evicted from number 10, done and dusted. But he needs a lot of support. He needs the support of the Lib Dems, who are not keen on offering that support. He needs the support of the SNP, who are more open to that, as well as some other opposition MPs. And he needs the support of Tory rebels. That's not realistic. But there is another plan. What the Lib Dems want to do is to nominate, say, Ken Clarke. Now, Ken Clarke is a very senior Tory MP. He's not senior in the government at the moment because he's very much out of kilter with them. But in terms of his experience, and he has been a minister in the past, he is very pro-European, very pro-EU, certainly wants the UK as a member of the EU, and has spoken out very strongly against Johnson's take on this. In fact, it's strongly believed there was one Tory MP who abstained, in fact, in the final 2 rounds of the leadership election contest. It's strongly believed it was Ken Clarke who did that on both occasions, because as soon as it was whittled down to pro-Brexit candidates, he was having none of it, or someone was having none of it. No one has said who it was. He certainly has the credentials. He's not my preferred candidate. He has the credentials. But of course, Jeremy Corbyn's position is that he wouldn't support him. So you have that difficulty. Is this an attempt by Johnson to think to himself, well, I don't believe they will depose me as Prime Minister, so I want to go ahead with this in the second week so that they then have no way of stopping me at all? Or is it a way of getting Parliament to do something in the belief it doesn't have time? Because there's a meeting next week that Jeremy Corbyn's going to be hosting with various representatives of the different factions in the different parties who want to oppose this. If they come to an agreement, then that's fine. There's nothing Johnson can do about it. But if they don't, then the situation will be that Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't issue that vote of no confidence in the first week. He will still be negotiating with the others. As soon as he's in a position for that to succeed, then he will go ahead with it. That's what he said. So agreement may not come until the second week or the third week. But if Boris Johnson is threatening that they only have that first week, maybe it's to try and bounce them into doing something that they're not entirely happy with, a coalition that effectively breaks down. So there is that possibility as well. But that is the situation at the moment, and I think it's probably what's going to colour the negotiations that go on next week. And as I say, it's one of these situations where I feel that if Boris Johnson was genuinely sounding out the Attorney General about this, and admittedly we only know this from a leak, but I think he could have done it with only people he trusted. I think he wanted us to know he's doing this. And if he wanted us to know he's doing it, more specifically, he wants his opponents in Parliament to know he's doing it. And that's what suggests to me that he has an ulterior motive. Because Boris Johnson has recently conceded that he can't legally prorogue anyway. I don't believe he can do it. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's not proven without doubt that he can't do it. Because no one has tried to do this under these circumstances before. So people have used prorogation tactically before, certainly, but they've also prorogued at a time when it naturally makes sense to as well. So it's not under these circumstances. So I'm thinking it's to try and bounce people into agreeing something that they're not happy about, to try and stop him, or to cause so much infighting that they don't get anything done in the first week. And, and there we go. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.